So there are two topics to deal with this morning. One is the proposal from GSI with regard to COVID response. The other one is a request for a letter to be submitted to the governor and ultimately to DOD to nominate us for consideration for Space Force headquarters. This is a meeting, and so let's go ahead and dispense with this first. This is a meeting that I participated on Thursday morning at Congresswoman Morris Rogers' request. Was an update from the DOD talking about the opportunity to be considered as a potential site for the Space Force headquarters. It's a site that will ultimately employ about 1,400 people, 600 civilians, 800 military, and some of the criteria that is a part of the application is that you have to be within 25 miles of a major military base that has all of the services necessary to support military detachment, which includes hospitals, the grocery, and other amenities that all are present out at Fairchild. The other thing is that it has to be in a major MSA, which Spokane qualifies for. And one of the criteria that is considered in the evaluation is quality of life, as well as housing and stuff, which compared to the other applicants for the state of Washington, which will probably include Everett, Lewis McChord, and Seattle, we kicked that one out of the park and stuff. So, but the deadline on this to the nomination,
we'll pick up the other things.
Nomination has to be to the governor, to DOD by the end of business tomorrow, June 30. So I did talk to the governor on Thursday, and he's aware of it. Adam McDaniel said that he would walk it through, and so we will, if the board would consider this request. All this is just a request to be nominated. So we approve it. It goes to the governor. The governor then submits the nomination letter to DOD, and that gets us into the process. Applications are actually due toward the end of July. Then they will make a decision sometime in October, probably announce it in November. So there is no downside to this at this point, but there is a significant upside. And so the action today is just to approve authorizing the drafting and signing of a letter to the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force requesting that we be considered as a potential site. The sites could be multiple locations. It doesn't necessarily have to be next to Fairchild. It could be, quite frankly, up the Kaiser aluminum site, where we've got significant land up there. It could be out in the West Plains. If there's, it's got to be a site of about 400 to 500 acres, contiguous acres. But if there's a site like that out in the valley, it could be out in the valley. So it just has to be within that 25-mile radius. And we can identify which site or submit multiple sites when we get to that stage. So it doesn't say that only one site can be submitted. On the call was representatives from the city, and my suspicion is that the city will probably be submitting an application as well. But the only place that they might be able to have 500 acres up in Hilliard. Otherwise, it'll be out in the West Plains. So that's the nature of the opportunity. And so I'll open it up.
Mr. Chair, may I say something, please?
Yeah, sure.
If it pleases the board, the 10 o'clock notice of special meeting on the CARES funding, we may want to take that action, go through whatever that needs to be done, end the special session, and then go into our regular CEO meeting at 10:30 to cover the Space Command and whatever other issues that we have.
Okay, so I thought when I talked to Gina, we had miscellaneous included as part of the special meeting notice.
Well,
Just keep in mind,
just talking to legal here, there's some concerns about on the special meeting, notice of special meeting and what we could cover under it or not. She's listed, rightfully so, on the agenda that after we take care of our special meeting and the CARES Act funding, we go right into our normal Monday morning business, and which will cover things, this and any other miscellaneous that we want.
all right.
Perfect.
Disappointing, but we can do it that way. So we'll defer this action to later on this morning. We've got a very tight timeline, so we've got to get this letter off to the governor today so that it can be submitted and at the Secretary of the Air Force by tomorrow. So with that, then let's go ahead and move into the conversation with regard to the CARES funding. This is a continuation of the conversation that we started with the GSI proposal. So just open up the floor for the three commissioners to have any opening comments, and then we can go through each section of this section by section. Do have Alicia Benson, Karen Kuhn, and Meg Winchester have also joined us and are available to answer any questions we might have. So who wants to jump in here first? Mary, I see your mic is off. Do you want to start off?
I can start off. So we just wanted, when you were gone on Tuesday, we just know that if we're going to start getting loans out to, or grants out to small businesses, we need to get this done sooner than later and waiting until after 4th of July. So that's why we wanted to have the special meeting today to have that discussion. So, so that's kind of my top priority, is looking at those small business grants and what that's going to be, and you know, looking to approve that. I know for the Visit Spokane campaign, you know, talking to Carrie, and I talked to John Colton with Patty Murray's office on CARES Act dollars, and looking at it, that this is trying to help recover our hospitality industry. That, you know, it's not just advertising, it's trying to get people back to be comfortable and boosting up our hospitality industry. So that's one of the things that, you know, to do that, it's, you know, what can we do, and trying to promote our area to get people back into our hotels and into our restaurants is, I think, a huge part of that. I will say, I think, you know, given what's going on right now, that the timing, I'm concerned on the timing as to how we do that and when we start to do that. If, you know, because I think it was going to be pretty aggressive to start sooner, thinking we were doing better. So anyway, so that's a question I have, you know, for my, you know, myself, that needs to get addressed. The Inlander campaign is an interesting one. I'm still, I mean, I see what it does. I'm not sure that fits COVID dollars. So that's just a question I have. And then for the others, I mean, I think they're, you know, they're again trying to promote the area, promote the businesses, you know, to get people back in them to help drive the economy. So I think those are things that I'm, you know, think, you know, need to happen too. So that's just my overall impression for all of that quickly.
Okay, Josh, you want to share some comments? Then I'll also share some comments from my meeting with the governor last Thursday, and I know Alicia was there in the room with me too. So, Josh, go ahead.
So, and I would ask, sort of, when we get to the end, if we can ask Carrie to kind of weigh in on what she thinks is allowable, not allowable. So, because I mean, there has to be that connection to COVID. Of the whole pitch from 2 weeks ago, I mean, by far my top priority is those small business grants. I want us to get those out as quickly as possible. I think that's extremely important. I think there's a lot of community support for that, and quite frankly, I think that's where the largest community need is. The the Visit Spokane campaign, I like. I think in order to fit the COVID parameters for the CARES Act, I think there's going to have to be a larger level of, you know, here's what our region has done to make us safe for COVID. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong on this, but I don't think it can be just a strictly come to Spokane. I think there needs to be, you know, come to Spokane because we've taken steps XYZ to keep you safe from the coronavirus. I think that may have to be emphasized a little more in order to kind of fit those CARES dollars. With the Spokane Valley Chamber, I mean, I thought, you know, they kind of hit the things that needed to be touched on as far as the connection to COVID, you know, providing that direct outreach to the businesses on how to comply with safety guidance. I mean, targeting consumer awareness and how to safely resume engagement with local businesses. I mean, I think they were there. The With the downtown partnership, I don't know if I just missed it. I didn't really see where the connection to COVID is that would qualify it for the CARES dollars, as well as with the Spokane Arts. It was more, um, I mean, you know, a buy local campaign, you know, hire local creatives. I mean, I didn't really see that connection to the coronavirus, how that plays in. I did want to get everyone's feedback sort of on the spread kindness, not COVID campaign. I know we emphasized the importance of wearing the masks, and you know, and what the masks were going to play in that equation of us being able to move on to phase 3 and phase 4 and beyond. Since that is now a mandate from the governor, has the need for that changed now that it's technically, I mean, technically punishable by law, essentially? I mean, it's a misdemeanor if you're not out there, you know, if enforced. Has it changed the need or level of need for that that part of the ask? So that's where I'm at. You're muted, Al.
That's not the only problem with me. The the Yeah, I was hoping that we were going to be able to deal with the grant program last Tuesday, and obviously things went south on me, so I apologize for that. I'd like to be able to get some parameters around the grant money done today and get the door if we could. I agree that we're at a point, especially now that you know, it looks like phase 3 is going to be several weeks off, not several days. That some of our businesses are probably in a really a difficult financial situation and stuff. So what can we do to get that money out right away? And then with regard to the marketing campaign, I agree with you, Josh. Now that the governor has made it the law, I'm not sure that you know, an ad campaign that says obey the law is maybe the right way to do it. You know, there are a lot of people that are doing it because it's the right thing to do, but those aren't the ones that are kind of going to cause the problem for us. It's the ones that aren't doing it because they feel like it's a defiance, it's imposing on their liberties, it's a whole litany of things, and those are the ones we have to somehow persuade to start to adhere to the wearing the mask and social distancing and all that kind of stuff, and continuing to tell them, you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it, isn't going to change their mind. So what is it that we can do, whether it's an incentive-based program or some other kind of social program? I don't know. But you know, I know that just telling them to do it isn't going to persuade them to actually change their conduct. So let me bring you up to speed a little bit with the conversation with the governor last Thursday, and then I'll ask Alicia to weigh in and give her perspective on it. It started out with the governor basically talking about the state of the state as he saw it with regard to COVID, what's going on with Yakima, and the increase in cases that we're seeing here locally, and said that from his perspective that one, we need to get to acceptable numbers, and that we're probably 3 or 4 weeks out before he'd even consider going to phase 3 from our standpoint. So there are 3 of us in the audience that pushed for give us some hope, give us some kind of benchmark that's actually achievable that will allow us to say, if we can do this, then we can open. I know Alicia pushed that topic, I pushed it, and Senator Billig pushed it. And so we weren't really getting anything until at the very end of the meeting, the governor finally said, well, here's my benchmark. It's 25 infections per 100,000 in a 1-week period. And that's so far away from where we're at right now that it wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't an achievable goal without some really heavy lifting from the community standpoint. So that being the case, then what are the things that we can do incrementally? And we've had conversations about maybe there's targeted industries we can go at and have specific programs for that will allow them to be able to move incrementally out of the phase 2. And I know that I think all 3 of us have been having various conversations with Bob Lutz about what does that look like and stuff. So we continue to push that. But all in all, I didn't walk out of that meeting with a sense of hope or an enlightened sense of direction. We did talk about, the target continues to move, that for a long time it was about hospital capacity and hospital bed capacity. And now that target seems to be moving on us. And I did ask if the Coyote Ridge hospitalizations were working against us in terms of the count. And well, he said, no, they weren't. The reality is they consume beds. And when you consume beds, regardless of whether you're counting them or not, they still consume beds, which consumes capacity and stuff. So, and then his defense of that was to say, well, some of the people in Coyote Ridge are Spokane residents, so you should be carrying your share of that responsibility and stuff. So that's kind of my takeaways. Alicia, what was your perspective?
I think, good morning, commissioners. I think, Commissioner French, you've captured it fairly well. I think I guess the biggest thing from a takeaway that I continue to have conversations with, our other colleagues here today on the call and elsewhere is the strategy for how do we help lift compliance? Because I think from the governor's standpoint, his primary strategy is masking and facial coverings, as we're seeing with his statewide mandate. And so what's the strategy that we can be deploying as a community between government, business, and our healthcare and public health community to push towards that compliance, which I think is, people, when we talk about hope, we're wanting to be able to understand what allows us to move to the next phase or partial phase, get greater capacity or more open. And we have to figure out how to maneuver maybe differently with the strategy and the approach that the governor is taking. And so that for me is where, I left. And I think there were some interesting things shared from others in the room when we think about how do we highlight businesses and consumers doing it well? How do we change the whole dialogue a little bit to Commissioner French's comments on, we have those who are not, but how do we begin to change that community norm around this being part of what allows us to get open? Who are the right message carriers? How do we get at the audiences, our millennial population? Some of those groups that we know are both having a huge spike in the increase of positive testing and social gathering and all of those kinds of things, but also can be critical in how we're able to begin to advance. And so I think the governor wasn't particularly interested in being here to strategize differently, but was here to make very clear that this is his approach and his strategy. And so I think from a Spokane County perspective, with our partnerships that exist, how do we double down in some ways on some of these partnerships and approaches to things that may be uncomfortable or outside of a normal lane, but that is what's going to allow us to get some of these businesses either open, allow them to stay open, and begin and continue to allow us to move along the approach the governor has for reopening the economy of the state of Washington. But my sense was, I specifically asked if we could have a meeting of two lanes, a pathway of hope for the business community on the economy, while we continue this pathway of public health. And I think that, and how do we tie those two pieces together? So I think that certainly, and as you talk about the proposal this morning, that's really our approach. I think some of the tactics within are easy to shift and change, but we really have to figure out how to continue to strategize differently as a coalition in Spokane County, and really take charge of our kind of how this county responds. That was my biggest takeaways from the conversation, is he's not budging. So how do we change our game?
Yeah, I think the other message that he hammered on a number of times in the meeting was, well, it's up to local leaders to start carrying this message. So he was really trying to solicit, local, municipal or county leaders to be able to carry the ball for him in terms of the wearing the mask and stuff. So, and then, in addition to myself, Nadine Woodward was there, Ben Wick was there, and then all three legislators from the 3rd were there. There wasn't anybody from any of the other legislative districts, just the 3rd. So not to be surprised.
Bob Lutz and Amelia Clark.
Yeah, Bob and Amelia and stuff. So Mary, did you have a comment?
No, you guys can finish that, and then I've got a few comments after.
Did you have anything else, Alicia? Okay, go ahead, Mary.
So it's been interesting. So I'm actually over in Seattle, so I'm in a hotel room over here. Max hasn't seen the job sites for, since the start of this, since the end of February. So he wanted to get over and see the job sites. And so we're over here. But we were down in Pullman on Saturday, moving our son down, putting some furniture in his apartment that he's going to be in down there. And it's been interesting because in Pullman, everybody was wearing their masks. I mean, we went into, Cougar country to get food, and there was maybe 2 people that weren't wearing masks, and the rest were all wearing masks. Over here in Seattle, pretty much everyone's wearing masks. Spokane is still just not wanting to do it. There is an ad campaign on the TV here to wear masks, to be kind. They're doing that. I know Alicia and I were talking that Lance Beck was just down in San Diego with his mother, who had surgery, and that there was definitely a campaign for wearing social, face coverings and that down there that was consistent across. It sounded like the municipalities down there, the area. So I don't know if Alicia, you want to speak to that a little bit, just in what you talked to Lance about. But it's just interesting. So I do think, whether we, that I think somehow we have to figure out a way to get people to wear masks in Spokane County, because it is definitely different there than it is as I'm traveling around right now. Because even just stopping for gas, on the way here, people are wearing masks. So people don't want to get COVID. They don't want to be spreading COVID. And I think we're seeing that. So how do we do that in Spokane? And whether it's a PSA or some type of campaign, we've got to do something to help drive that message. And like I said, I'm just watching a little bit of TV here. The last night on the news and this morning on the news, there was definitely ads running during the news programs on, wearing face coverings and all of, and it was a Be Kind campaign. So similar to, what GSI is looking at, but a little bit different. So I don't know what's going to work or not, but we got to try to do something for, and I look at this is public health that we have to get across, and economic health, because, if we don't, we're not going to get these businesses to reopen. And like I've talked about, before, it's like going into some businesses that are doing it well and others that are not. I won't be going back to the ones that aren't doing it well, and we're seeing in Spokane, we had the one bar that closed down for a little bit, but I think there's other businesses that we're seeing a spike from those businesses. I was not told which ones or any of that, but that, I think there's another one that had several positive cases from. So somehow we've got to get that message out, because we don't want to be like the southern states. Otherwise, we're going to end up in Spokane County like the southern states, where it's like, oh, we're just going to do whatever. So to me, it's not a political statement. It's a statement to protect our economy that we have going right now, and then to help get it moving in the future direction. So I don't know. So I do think that spending some of the CARES dollars on some kind of campaign to help would be, I think, good use of those CARES dollars to help continue to keep our economy where it's at, and then to, hopefully get it to where it needs to be.
Alicia?
Or if I could add something, and I mean, if anybody could, free to jump in here. I mean, the mandate for the mask has been in place for a little over 72 hours. I mean, what have we seen change in 72 hours? I assume the ads that were running in Arizona and the ads that are running on the west side, that campaign probably began before this became a mandate by the governor statewide. I mean, I can tell you that this weekend, my wife said she made a run to Home Depot, and she said it was probably 90% of the people there had masks on Saturday. I mean, but that's after the mandate went into place on Friday. I mean, are we, you reference the bar that had the outbreak. That happened before the mask mandate went into place. I mean, we need to look at, where are we today with the mask mandate in place? I mean, everybody in the state, everybody in Spokane County knows you're required to wear a mask now. The businesses are supposed to have can have signage up, when you get to the front door that says you're required to wear a mask. That wasn't there, 72 hours ago. It is there now. So I mean, if we're comparing with what the situation was last week to where it is today, that's a flawed way of looking at it. There is a new statewide mandate in place. It's a completely different world we're looking at now, and saying, be kind, wear a mask means something different a week ago when you weren't required to wear one than it does today when you are required to wear one if you're out in public. So does the messaging need to change based on the governor's order? I mean, that's sort of where I'm at. I mean, now, I mean, that be kind, spread kindness, not COVID, that was more based on do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's different. It's wear a mask because you are now required to by law from the governor. I mean, it's a new, I mean, it's new guidelines we're working with now than we were last week or 2 weeks ago when we originally saw this presentation. So that's where I'm at, is, does it need to change based on the governor's order that kicked into effect on Friday?
Mary?
So I'll say, you guys have learned my eating habits, goodness sakes, through this. So we were picking up a U-Haul trailer at the University City U-Haul dealership on Saturday morning. Went to the McDonald's, the line was, very long for the drive-through. So we went in, we all three had masks on. We were the only people in there, other than the employees, that had a mask on. And there was like probably 8 people in the lobby area, because you could only order and pick up and then take it out. But none of them had masks on. And that was Saturday morning. I think Spokane County is just, it's such a political issue. I don't think they care if the governor did a mandate or not. I think that was part of having the hospitals come in and talk to us, to say, wearing a mask does really make a difference in the spread. I think people just aren't getting that message in Spokane County because they've been so defiant on, I don't want to wear a mask. And since they know it's, yes, it's enforceable, but who's enforcing it? so how, you know, again, it's like, how do we get people to realize that this is what you're doing for your neighbor? So I think whether there's a mandate or not, I don't know. So,
Well, Tim Ormsby, when he spoke, I think he described it very well. He said, you know, there's a sense of independence and you know, Wild West mentality here, and almost an invincibility about the approach that many in the community take with regard to, you know, wearing the mask or doing any of the other things that, you know, the medical community has identified as being critical for us getting out of this. And I think that's accurate. I mean, he was saying, you know, that he actually shared a story about him and his mom. And he said, you know, when my mom came and shook her finger at me, there was no way I was going to disobey her. She said, well, what we need now is mom to come shake her finger at us and tell us to quit doing it. Well, that's not going to happen. But the point is, you know, what is it that's going to change? What is it that we can do to affect change that will get people to become compliant? And I think there an ad campaign or some kind of messaging is important. I'm not sure what the messaging is, because going to people and saying you got to wear the mask, for those that are politically motivated to say the heck with you, I'm not going to wear it. Okay, fine. Now we've got a line in the sand. What's going to change their pattern of conduct? You know, Alicia and I were brainstorming about, you know, is there some kind of reward system, or there's some kind of, you know, social acknowledgement or something that will reward people for doing the right thing. And it's a shame that you would have to do that. Doing the right thing ought to be enough reward in and of itself. But what is it that's going to change their pattern? What is it that's going to change the conduct so we can get out of this? I don't have that answer and stuff, but you know, we got to find it. We got to find it pretty quick. Otherwise, we're going to be in phase 2 for a long time. Anyway, so that's kind of a summary of the end of last week. So you know everything. Anything that I missed, Alicia, that you think the board should be aware of?
No, and I think I may, and Meg and Jamie may have a comment. I think just a couple of things I would just add. Yes, things are shifting. I think we've also, unfortunately, we're seeing a trend of a number of businesses publicly coming out really against the governor's mandate, letting folks know that they can come, they don't need to wear a mask. I mean, we certainly are, yes, the mandatory change makes some progress, but we certainly have a lot of work to do in Spokane County. I started capturing pictures this weekend of where I saw it well, some of our small businesses that are really, so that we can add to that campaign. And then I think I would just add on the, like Lance's experience in San Diego, and I believe Meg was just there as well. His comment to me was how there was no sense, and of course this was right before the mandatory, but it wasn't just about masks being mandatory, just the whole concept of the things that we need to be doing to move our economy forward. You couldn't really see that as he moves through Spokane County, but it was immediately visible as soon as his plane landed in San Diego. And so from the airport terminal, off the, the airport, off his airplane, all the way through, in the entire experience, from restaurants and otherwise, was very, very public, that these are the things that we needed to do and that we're in it together. And he sent to us pictures of some of the signage that was in their airport and all of these things. And so I think this is just this piece that when we think about tourism, we know that things are starting to pick up, and Meg and Jamie maybe want to jump in there, but we have to build these two messages together if we want to have the advantage for Spokane around being, yes, it's safe and we're open, come do business here, concept married together.
And just really quickly, I was in San Diego last weekend as well, and everything Alicia said is exactly right. And it was just, people just did it because it was the right thing to do. But they're struggling with getting their tourism back as well. We know that we have got to get this safety message out even more so now, as things are starting to kind of, some states are going backwards and everything too. So, we talked originally about overlapping these campaigns. Well, now they're going to be absolutely merged. They have to be. I don't know if you saw, we actually put a mask on our turtle as we start to move into some of the tourism things. We're going to be doing that with all of our characters and things like that to reinforce a message wherever we can. But just to know is that I think it's to Mary's point, and it's going to be very important that we get this message out, that we're able to lift it up. It's going to take us about 2 to 3 to possibly 4 weeks to really get the campaign tourism up and running. Clearly we've got a portion of it done now. We will be shifting as things start to move too, but a lot of these dollars will be playing into what we are able to do in a regional aspiration. But as we move forward looking at that, we know that it's going to be constantly moving, and we've got to both incorporate, Jamie and I were just sitting here talking, both the governor's mandate on it as well as just the social aspect of it. I'm going to let Jamie talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I would like to address Commissioner Kern's concerns specifically, and I think that it's worth noting that now that it is a law, that maybe the message needs to be looked at. I will say this is like, I grew up in Chicago, and I can still remember the social norming things, messages that were communicated by the state after laws were in place, right? Click it or ticket was one that in Illinois over and over again, even though it was the law to wear a seatbelt, that message was over and over and over. But if you notice, the message, click it or ticket, is a much different message than spread kindness, not COVID, because it is saying inherently in that message that if you don't do it, there is a law that we will enforce and we will ticket you for doing that, right? Which is a different type of message. You drink, you drive, you lose, right? The DUI message that was over and over again. It was the same thing. The inherent part of being punished for it would be you lose, right? Obviously, that's part of being chewed up in the legal system after a DUI. It's very expensive. So I look at our message, and I think, Commissioner Kearns, that is insightful to recognize that it might need to be tweaked a little bit. How my only concern with tweaking the spread kindness, not COVID, is I'm not sure, as I think was expressed by the group here, that most people in Spokane County look at that mandate as an actual law and the governor can actually do something. I think politically the state has grown farther apart during COVID, and I don't think that they look at the governor as an authority figure. And more importantly is that if we aren't going to enforce it lawfully, having a message that says, if you don't wear the mask, you're going to get a ticket, I think feels like a hollow promise, or like a parent threatening a child that they're not going to follow through on. So I think to start in the beginning, I think that the kindness message will circulate better, and we'll get a better response from people, because as Commissioner French pointed out, the maverick independent mentality of Spokane County, if you tell them, well, oh, we're going to ticket you now if you don't wear this mask, I actually think that will backfire. I think it has the potential to backfire, because I think people are going to be like, oh, now they're going to arrest us. Here we go. I mean, I can see the social media memes already being started if we go that route. And so that's and then I also wanted to address the timing and the safety message. I agree with both of those. I have lost sleep. I think I have an ulcer now because of them. And so I'm well aware that the timing of the message is critical. I will say that for us, it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks for us to even get the campaign to go, because there's media commitments and things that no good business person is going to make commitments to vendors without the money being approved, right? And so that will take a 2 or 3 week process before we even for Visit Spokane to get that message out there. So we will probably, if approved today, we would probably be approaching that campaign launch in its entirety by the time we're about to enter phase 3, based on the time frame that the governor has given us. So I just wanted to address those things. And in terms of the message, really, as I saw the campaign rolling out, it would start by getting them out of the house, right? That's step one. You have to get people out of the house, and it doesn't necessarily mean in our hotels. And then the next thing is to get them into our businesses. And then the third part is getting them into our hotels. So like when I look at our message and how it's tiered, the first thing is just getting them out of the house. So the beginning of the promotion will be outdoors, very easily social distancing thing, something that's easily executed by anybody when they leave their house, right? They can go be outdoors. And the next thing would be getting them into our businesses, which again would be a slight variation of that message. And then lastly, the hotels, because I think that the hotels and staying overnight in another place is going to be, for the large majority of Americans, will be the last step. And so I just wanted to make sure that we categorically addressed each one of your guys' concerns, because they're all valid, and they're things that we have considered as well.
And the only other thing that I really wanted to bring up, we've kind of talked about, I think with many of you, is that, looking at this, we changed the name, as you all saw, we sent to, we're calling it Hospitality Business Recovery, because that truly is what it is. It's for us to get these businesses where people are coming back through their doors, staying in the hotel, and getting that money coming, as Commissioner French said, we want that outside money coming in and circulating within our county, so that we can start to recover from this. And that's going to be very important. We can just circulate, like I said, we can circulate the money amongst ourselves, but bringing in that additional outside funding, goes into the general funds, keeps our businesses going. Many of them can't survive on just our local residents in the best of times, and they do rely on the actual tourists that are coming in. So that's our whole goal with this, is recovering, getting our businesses recovered and up and going, and frankly, our whole county.
I was just thinking about, part of the conversation this morning hopefully will be about the criteria for the grant program. And one of the criteria could be, do you have an active campaign for masking both clients and employees? And that's a criteria if you want to be eligible for the grant. That's an idea that might persuade some of the businesses that have this sense of defiance. Well, guess what? We put money on the table. Maybe that might persuade them to change their defiance.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Just an idea. So, great conversation. Yeah, Josh.
Hey, Al. So
Yeah.
I mean, if I just as I look, I mean, and I'm sorry to keep whoever came up with the spread kindness, not COVID. I'm sorry. Yeah, if I continue to keep hammering here, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's. I think just it needs to be something more direct that shows what you get. I mean, that shows what you get if you're gonna wear a mask. What is, I mean, just spread kindness, not COVID. It's just sort of one of those feel good quotes out there that I think a lot of people are gonna say, well, what does that mean? What does that get me? It's, something, just spitballing, something as basic as just, we're all in this together. Wear a mask, open our businesses. Wear a mask, open our economy. I mean, so showing people, if you wear a mask, this is what you get in return. I mean, just the spread kindness, not COVID. I mean, it's kind of abstract. It's kind of, well, yeah, of course, we're going to be nice. Yeah, nobody wants to catch COVID. Nobody wants the coronavirus. Everybody wants people to be kind. Where's the connection? I mean, it's what does that get for our community? So, I mean, just, wear a mask, open our businesses. So something like that. I mean, just, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I mean, show people what it is they get in return for putting on a mask.
Yeah, so that starts to go back to what I was talking about earlier, Josh. If, some people are going to be motivated by doing the right thing. Other people are going to be motivated because they get something out of it.
Exactly.
What is it that they're going to get out of it? I don't, obviously we can't be involved in a free giveaway program for doing the right thing, but it's along that same concept of, how do you persuade people to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do?
Yeah.
So great conversation. It gets us back to, I think all three of us want to do something with regard to to at least the grant program and getting that out. I could be wrong. We haven't had a chance to talk, but my sense is, in listening to the conversation, we're all three there. Is that an accurate statement or not? Anybody not motivated to move forward with some kind of grant program at this point? So then the question becomes, what are the parameters that we want? Well, one, how much do we want to put into it? And then what are the parameters that we want to see to be able to be eligible to receive the grant money? And then third, who do we think is in the best position to be able to administer the grant program? So, so which one do you want to start out with first? Do you want to start out with the dollar amount or parameters? Anybody?
Either.
One
I
in-
think the GSI asked was for 10 million, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there any pushback on the 10 million? Anybody want to see a different number? And again, we can always come back and supplement at a later date if we find out that the need continues or perpetuate or whatever, but at least
Yeah.
that's a kickoff point.
I
So,
in my mind, I was thinking start with 10. If we see popularity, I think it's something we need to come back and replenish the account if it's needed. So I think this is extremely important. I mean, personally, this is one of my top priorities was supporting our businesses a lot. You know, right there next to food security, we took care of food security, and so I mean this is my top priority at this point. And so I'd be fine starting at 10 and just have a commitment that if it's needed, you know, we'll definitely consider replenishing.
Mary, you looked like you were going to make a comment.
Yeah, so no, I think this is a top priority, which is why we wanted to have this today. I think, Alicia, can you just to ensure that we know why 10 million was chosen, can you just give us that feedback again?
We looking at the dollars, 10 million is what they were doing statewide, and we knew that only, in that case, that was only 61 businesses in Spokane County. And so 10 million we just used that as an idea to kind of match what was already being done when we think about being able to at least make a significant investment in businesses in Spokane County. There's no magic number. I know Lance was just able to join us as well, but we knew that this was a way to, you could award funds. And again, it would depend a little bit on the parameters that the county wants, but you could award funds to, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 at least businesses in Spokane County if you went just with that model alone.
How many businesses how many businesses across the state for the 10 million?
They were able to start it as 5, so they're going to end up just over 1,000 businesses probably that they're investing in across the whole state.
Yeah, at $1,000 a whack, that's or at $10,000 a business, that's 1,000 businesses.
About, yeah. And there are a few of the businesses were awarded $8,000 or $8,500, but the majority are the full 10.
Okay, and so that's what they were.
The businesses that we had over 1,800 businesses that applied in Spokane County, and the majority all asked for the full 10. A handful didn't, based upon the size of their business and the requirements, the specifics around what it funds and doesn't fund. All of them were looking really at a way that they could bridge for 1 or 2 months worth of expenses without payroll, because payroll is excluded from that.
So if we wanted to extend the number of businesses, we could go to a stepped program so that 5,000, 7,500, and 10,000 could take that number from 1,000 businesses up to maybe 1,500 businesses, potentially.
Was the intent to have this available for nonprofits as well, or just for-profit small businesses?
Our recommendation was to include nonprofits, not to eliminate them based upon their tax status, because they're still providing significant important services in the region and have been significantly impacted by the lack of dollars available to support.
The other component with the $10 million ask is that the level of demand on that commerce grant initially was 1,800 business applications in on that. So funding 62 of those leaves us 1,700 and change there. And so should we drop that overall top award to 5,000, as Commissioner French said, that would allow us inside that 10 million mark to satisfy the demand that we saw in that first application process, should we see the equal demand here in a subsequent application. So there was more thought to it than just pulling a number out of thin air. It was behind seeing that lack of capacity that we saw through commerce to meet the demand that we originally saw.
And can I just add that that was only open to businesses 10 and under, 10 employees and under. So it was a very small, and 10 and under and for-profit. So that was a very small percentage of the likely need.
Okay.
So the other question I have is were people excluded because of getting the PPP loans or grants from the government? Because to me, a lot of there's some people that got them, some people that didn't. And the people that got them, it certainly has helped, but the people that didn't get them, I mean, really need the help. So, you know, because they have not been able to see any kind of relief come. So would that be something that you guys have talked about?
They weren't excluded at the time because it was before the PPP had started to flow. But we've talked about it significantly both here regionally, and then also as we've talked about it with partners across the state, that would potentially make sense for any additional grant program or funding would be that you could put that exclusion on there.
And then I think I'm in favor of either tiering it or doing, you know, 5,000, you know, something so that way we can get more money to more businesses, right? Not more money, but get money to more businesses.
And I would think that maybe the other thing is that the eligibility for what you could spend the money on would be much broader than the PPP program and stuff. So some of those things that might help, but were excluded out of the triple P, we might be able to cover here too. Be my thought anyway.
Yeah, I guess my thought that would be if you've received PPP, then you wouldn't be eligible for these small business grants.
Yeah, no, I agree, but there's some of the folks that applied for the triple P program ultimately didn't take it because they couldn't use the money for the expenses that they were incurring. Okay. So if we broaden the scope of what you could use it for, it might be able to help those businesses that didn't take the triple P because of the exclusions.
Get it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Josh, your thoughts?
Well, so I mean, some of these things you've thrown out there, you know, with that it was capped at such a small size, you know, number of employees for the businesses. I mean, is 10 enough to start off with? 10 million enough to start with? Or are we pretty confident we're going to burn through that really fast?
I think the question was to you, Alicia.
Well, I think we were wanting to be reasonable in our ask. I think a little bit to your question, Commissioner, would be if what the county, as far as cap, do you want to increase the number of businesses that would be eligible based upon, you know, that would have X number of employees or less, or do you want to stick with that 1 to 10? I think that we would see that the need will still be significant. As we've talked about, should we have the opportunity to move forward a grant program, both those that had initially applied, we could go back out and include, but that was less than a 2-week period of time that those 1,800 businesses applied. And so that we know there's still greater demand than that also. So I think it's quite possible. There hasn't, outside of the PPP, there hasn't been much additional relief that has been available for small businesses. So yes, I think you could. I think it just depends what your pool, what size of, what the parameters are that you want to set on your grant program.
Well, and so if we were, and I don't know that there's a requirement to do that, but there might be some logic in, we're going to be consistent with what we did with the PPEs. We limited that to 49 and less. So maybe the grant program is for 49 or less too. Throw that out for conversation. Maybe 49 is the right number. Maybe it's 25 or less or something. I mean, the small businesses are the ones that we want to help the most. And I don't know where that break point is between small and medium size.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, cause what concerns me is, I mean, we've seen, you know, I'm just trying to think of the businesses that we've seen close, you know, that we've seen on the news, the ones that have gotten the big cover. I mean, they're all greater than 10 employees, you know, and those have gone out of, you know, when they close their doors, I mean, that's a lot of people that are now out of a job. You know, if we limit it to 10, you know, that helps, you know, a lot of very important businesses, but it's leaving a lot of other businesses that are still at risk of closing their doors that don't have access to this. So, I mean, I'd like us to open it up to a larger than 10. I mean, I guess I'll rely on rely on Alicia and Lance kind of for some advice on what you think that number is. But I mean, my gut tells me 10's too small. Those are too small of businesses. I want them included, but I want that cap to be larger.
Mary?
So when Cindy came to us on the PPE, she had it at the small business and nonprofits of, I think it was 19 and under. So basically 20 employees and under.
Mm-hmm.
That was what she considering a small business. I'd be willing to look to that level. I don't know. I think going to, I want to see where we're at that point. It's like, because, $5,000 or $10,000, in a small business is not going to get you that far. And we don't have the money to get, I think if you've got over 20 employees, your $10,000 isn't going to do much to really help. So, and if someone's at the point where they're a going concern, again, I don't think $10,000 is going to make the difference as to whether they're going to stay in business or not. And what I would hate is to give them $10,000 and they go out of business the next day. So I mean, that's got to be part of the criteria, is how do we help these businesses that are struggling, that potentially that this will be the thing that helps them so they stay in business. And again, as we know, it's just, wearing face coverings so we can keep these people in business and we can keep customers and keep moving forward. So that's why, I mean, I still see that, it's like it all goes hand in hand to make it better for the businesses and our economy.
Don't mean to beat a dead horse, but Mary, you just drove home my point. You wear your mask, the businesses open back up. I mean, that's the messaging right there, what you just said. I think that's a much stronger message, what you just said, and you're spot on. You wear your message, the businesses get to open and stay open. I mean, I think that's the marketing right there. I mean, you just said it. I mean, because it's the truth. That's what the messaging needs to be. You wear your mask, the business is open. I mean, this is what you do and this is what you get. I mean, I think it's a great idea, Mary. I love what you said.
Keep saying it.
Yeah. Wear your mask, the business is open. I mean, what you do and what you get. So
the other thing is, we could, let's, and I'm not campaigning, I'm just trying to summarize so we can get us to a point where we can move forward. So if you were to say it's businesses with 20 or less, and what would you think about the idea of, if you got PPP, it's the max you could get is $5,000. If you didn't get PPP, the max is $7,500 or $10,000. It's a step. Depending upon if you've already received aid from another source, then maybe you don't get as much money from this. But if you haven't gotten anything, you're going to need more money. And so that dollar amount is a higher dollar amount. What do you think of that?
Well, I think based on businesses that I know that got the PPP, honestly, I would rather see this go to businesses that didn't get it, because we're still not going to be able to get to all the businesses. So I'd rather see this go to businesses that haven't received any kind of aid.
Okay, Josh?
I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards what Al's proposal there. I've talked to some businesses that have gotten the PPP, and they've said, they heard it was available, they ran out, they got it, and then they're in a situation where it's like their business was still not able to get to open because of where the phase was, and they're like, there's no way we can even spend the PPP. It's like, yeah, we have it. It's like, but we're going to have to send it back, because by the deadline on when it has to be spent, they're like, we can't spend it, because it's just, it's to pay the wages of the employees. And so, I think a lot of them, if they knew where we were going to be in the phases with their delayed openings for how long we were in phase one, I think a lot of them probably wouldn't have got it. I mean, because
right.
or at least would have gotten a much lower number, would not have gotten, as large of a amount. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to punish them for essentially doing something that, quite frankly, they didn't know where they were going to be because of the governor's determination, and the delayed delayed timeline and even allowing Spokane County to apply to phase 2.
Right, but they extended that from 8 weeks to 24 weeks now.
Did they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's
All right.
been extended, and they're
Okay.
allowed different uses as well. That 25% now can go to different rental. You know, if you had to rent equipment or something, that you've got, you know, different things. So they've opened that a little bit more too.
Okay.
That it's not just 100% to payroll. That it's payroll, and I think my last webinar that Max and I were listening in on, that it's actual, you know, 25% could go to other costs. So
Okay.
that's why that's why I think with the extension of it, I think it's a much better program, because now people that, you know, were initially, because some of the construction industry was sending it back. I mean, they
Yeah.
could have kept it now that they extended it. So I mean, that's where it's like with any of this, it's just frustrating as the rules all keep changing. But they have extended it from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. And Alicia, you could correct me if I'm wrong.
No, they did do that. Yeah.
I think a component that we could add to this is that we might be able to accomplish both what both elements of the argument here are, in that PPP was it was reduced to 60% had to be spent on payroll costs, and so it actually is much more forgivable than originally. That all came very much just recently, so just at the beginning of June here. And so what we could do though in the application process is if we extend it out to businesses of up to 19 or up to 20, whatever number we set, that is FTE, so that doesn't take into consideration the part-time employees. So the organizations like restaurants, which are ones that we often think of storefronts closing throughout this period, it makes it a little easier for them to qualify into a lower employee count because they don't have as many full-time employees. But then through the matrix that we developed for the Commerce Grant, we would be able to weight in the aspect of whether you had qualified for PPP and took it. And then again, the back half of that is that if we build that into the grading matrix there on those, ultimately, I think our suggestion is still to run this similar to what was with Commerce, where we take those through independent grading. It's really a blind application process to the graders, and it's very much numbers driven, and it funnels out a listing, a prioritized listing of who has the greatest need. From there, we would send the recommendation for what businesses would be awarded the grants back to the board for approval on which grants would be approved. So ultimately, the commissioners, you would still retain control over who has approved grants into that process. And so we'd basically be able to give you the list with their grading matrices and why they came out in the way that they did. And you'd be able to evaluate what organizations are approved and not approved, but with the data to support that from their application process. And so adding that question in doesn't preclude us from allowing PPP organizations who had qualified for that funding to be included in the application process, but we can justly weight their applications based on maybe if they did get PPP and they were able to utilize X amount of it, then their application falls lower in the application list. And then still, even so, from there, Commissioner French's idea of potentially, if you one of those final elements to this is if you did get PPP and your application still finishes higher in the list, you might only be eligible for 5,000 instead of 10,000. That's easy to implement into that process as well. So I think the beauty of it is that the application can really be the tool to help us sort and funnel and decipher which organizations have the greatest need. And so if we lean into that application process, that would be the piece that if we make a rock solid application, it should help us alleviate some of those questions on where the greatest need is within the community. And then really as soon as we have the applications in, we'll know that true level of need. And so we'll know if our number is sufficient or if maybe it falls short. And Truthfully, 10 million might fall short, but it might be all that we have in the budget with the CARES dollars to be able to fulfill. And so that needs to be something we're all aware of going into this. And ultimately, I think when we sat down and talked as kind of 5 joint organizations discussing this, our goal is that we want to get money into businesses' hands as soon as possible to alleviate storefronts closing. I think we see it happening daily. So the system is in place to be able to do this quickly, and tweaking that system is perfectly okay. It's just we're at that point that we want to have that tool available to businesses here in Spokane County.
Okay. What other parameters would we like to put on there?
Well, so I guess, Al, I'm wondering if, we need them to come back to us with what this process is going to really look like, because I certainly don't want to be the one making the decision. I mean, I think I want to give out say we're going to give $10 million, and I want that process to be outside of us. I don't really want it coming back to us, because I think we're relying that they're the experts in the, with the businesses, and that I think that should be an outside process and not coming back to us to make the final decision on that. So maybe we need to, agree that we're going to give so much money, and that, we're going to take this next week then to come up with what those parameters are. And we agree to those next week, but at least then we're starting down the process.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't want to be in a position to where we're approving potentially 1,000 different applications for grant money. One, that's not our wheelhouse. Two, it's not the best use of our time, and that's why we've got experts to do that stuff as opposed to having us take care of it. But are you okay with that, Josh?
I am. We're just asking for trouble if we're the ones picking winners and losers in that. So there's no way we're going to get it right. And I'd much rather somebody else be doing that. We'll allocate the funds. We'll put the faith in those that know how to do this to bring it home at the end there.
Okay.
And that's fine with us. That was a component that was built into the commerce process that was another layer of oversight that we were okay with. And if you wanted that same level, we were fine with that. But I know we're confident in the application process producing the highest level of need in a order that we can approve from. And so I think that it's no problem to facilitate without that added layer of oversight if needed. So.
And I think, Lance, when it went back to commerce, it was still going to people at commerce. It wasn't going to electeds. So I think that's, part of
the governor ultimately signed off on it, but really just because it was specific strategic reserve fund dollars, he has to sign off on any of those. But the actual process that was done at commerce was done by commerce staff within not any of the electeds.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing was, there's a time sensitivity to this as well, and putting it into a position to where we've got to sign off on this is just going to add delays to the process, and not necessarily delays that will increase the quality of it. So I hate to add another layer of red tape when we don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any other aspects of this grant program that you would like to put on the table and talk about now, or do we want to, a path forward that we could consider is we could go ahead and make a motion to authorize allocating $10 million to a grant program with details to be agreed to at a later date, so that at least, and then charge GSI with putting together a grant application for review and approval by the board. Once we approve the application, then that's it. The rest of it is up to them to administer. So that's one potential path forward. And there clearly are a dozen different others. I'm just throwing it out for a starting point here. And the other question is, Alicia, do you guys have the capacity to be able to administer this, or is this something we ought to be looking at SNAP to do, or bankers, or what? Tell me what your capacity is.
So I think a couple of things, and we certainly have the system in place to do it. Capacity wise, we certainly would need some support to continue to the capacity, and we brought a temporary hire on to support the previous process, and have kept that has been Cindy. And then we'd be working, I mean, one of our commitments is how we work with our other partners. So with Lance and the team at the Greater Spokane Valley Chamber, and the West Plains Chamber and Business Spokane, like how do we, and DSP, like how are we utilizing their capacity as well to ensure that we're reaching every business that could be eligible for those grant funds. So I think certainly from a systems and capacity standpoint, we're good, but certainly dollars to support the overall operations would be helpful also. That's maintaining the role that we currently have to manage and facilitate the grant process, or whether that's somebody within the county to help support it. Those are pieces that just facilitation of the process itself is significant.
Well, the other thing, I think you've done a really good job of advertising the PPE program that is, going to be distributing this week and stuff. I thought you got pretty good coverage. Not only saw it in the newspaper, I saw it in electronic media as well and stuff. So it seemed like that message got out fairly well. So the question would be if we had GSI doing this, making sure that it extended to not only your membership, but also the business community at large, including those that aren't members and stuff. So that would be an important aspect of this. So so out of the $10 million, what are you thinking would need to be allocated to cover the administrative cost of a program like this?
That's an excellent question. I haven't run the numbers on it, but I would say that if a person and some dollars, I mean, to your point of the marketing reach that would need to occur, and Kara and Lance, feel free to jump in, but I would say probably, if we had 50 or 60 grand to support the people and the marketing push, that would probably be enough to support the position that we already have on place.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the only other component that we've talked about directly is working with our developer who put the Inland Biz Strong tool together already, and that was privately funded, but taking some dollars to build out that tool to also incorporate a digitized application process to speed our data allocation process for the applications. And so if we could, I think we estimated it'd be another 15 or so to be able to digitize that full process, which would really aid us in executing the applications at a quicker pace. So the last set came in via PDFs and had to be fully digitized by somebody was entering that data into the
7 of my staff.
Yeah. So if we could digitize that, that would really speed things up, and our developers are ready to go to do that portion. So we look at another 15 or so to facilitate that.
Okay, Mary.
So Carrie, with dollars like this, can we, usually grants come with administrative costs, and so a certain percentage can go to administrative costs. So, I mean, like if we did 100,000, that's 1% of 10 million, right?
Mm-hmm. We're good on that. Could we suggest
that we do a administrative, number of 1%, or is that going to be enough? Because I mean, typically you see like 3% a pretty small amount. I know on the capital request from the state, they get 3%. Normally you see 10% for federal grants. So if we did 1% or 1.5%, just to make sure that they've got the funding to manage it.
I was going to suggest that maybe a budget come back on this, that, when they do it, I mean, not to slow the process down, but to really have Alicia take a look at it to make sure, because I would hate to have them shortchange themselves on it. 1% isn't unreasonable. Others aren't, either. As long as we keep it and within the spirit of it. But I want to make sure that they're covering their costs that they're going to need as well to oversee this project.
to be able to move this thing forward, hopefully yet this morning. I mean, if we were to say up to 1% subject to a final budget, at least we can authorize them to start moving forward and putting together details. And then between Alicia and Carrie, they can work that out to finalize whatever that marketing budget is. That would be a way to at least get us to where we can move forward.
And commissioners, if we had to go higher because of other costs that weren't foreseen, we could come back in that. Is that would
Yep.
be okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just
Okay,
don't want to box them in on that.
Mhm.
I have one question. I just want to run by Carrie just to make sure. I mean, I'm totally comfortable with everything we've discussed here. Carrie, I know we'd be able to pay for the marketing materials, but as far as the staff goes, since that is a current employee, we're not crossing any lines as far as supplanting, are we? Since
No.
they're already an employee?
Well, we got to make sure that it wasn't in their current budget, but if they're, here's what they talk about. They don't really talk about staff so much in marketing, the newest tool that came out, the newest question. So we need to take a look at that, Josh. If they're currently employed and they were going to, but if the message is different, if it's more specific to COVID, if it's more specific to reopening the economy, it wouldn't be related to their normal course of duty. So I think we can get around.
Okay, great.
And I would just answer that it's a temporary role that we hired as a result of COVID that wasn't currently budgeted for nor on staff.
Correct.
Okay.
So is there anything else that we want to put on the table, or do we think we've got enough general sense about where we want to go that we can probably entertain a motion to at least move this forward? Just asking the question. I want to make sure, both Josh and Mary are comfortable.
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable to get the small business grant program out.
So the ask would actually be, and what I heard was $10 million plus 1%. Is the 1% included in the 10 million, or is the 1% on top of the 10 million?
I would put it on top of the 10 million.
I think
Okay.
that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so then I would be open to a motion to authorize moving forward with a small business grant program of up to $10,100,000 to include administrative and marketing cost for businesses. And I don't know whether you want to include all the parameters now, or whether we leave all the other parameters as part of the application, and we'll deal with that because I think we've had a pretty good conversation. I just don't know how we wrap all of that up into a motion this morning so we can get started.
I would rather see the parameters come back to us for approval. That let's see if we can take the week to get the parameters done for approve that. But this way they know the money's coming. We can plan for it and start moving forward.
Okay. You okay, Josh?
Yeah. No, I think we're in agreement here on this.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So it's in your court now, Josh.
All right. Mr. Chair, I move to allocate $10 million of CARES Act funding for a small business grant program, as well as up to 1%, which is $100,000 for administration costs to implement the small business grant program, with details to come back to the Board of County Commissioners from our area chambers, including GSI, Spokane Valley Chamber of Commerce, with the details of how the grant program will be administered and dispersed to our small businesses of up to 20 employees within Spokane County.
I will second the motion.
Okay, you've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you. We got direction. You got money. Go forth, do great things. So can we circle back and just have a conversation about what we want to do with regard to how do we get our arms around the marketing campaign with regard to the mask. And maybe it's broader. Maybe it's about compliance, and it's not about the mask. It's about compliance. And then also, Carrie, my understanding is you've been looking at the guidance about what we can do with regard to the ad campaign for the tourism industry. And you want to share a little bit about what you've discovered, or what your impression is about what we can and cannot do, so we can start getting our arms around what we want to do with regard to tourism?
Sure. The latest guidance that came out last week with regards to that, a question came up on whether CARES money could be used to remarket like a local community's convention facilities or the tourism industry. And they did indicate, they answered yes if the cost of the remarketing satisfied the requirements of the CARES Act. Again, what does that mean? Expenses incurred to publicize the resumption of activities and step to take and to ensure the safe experience that may be needed due to public health emergency. So things that we were talking about this morning, that if you really centered it around businesses, what they're doing to bring people back out of their homes and back into accessing maybe the restaurant industry or shopping, that kind of thing. So it really specifically addressed what they talked about. Expenses related to developing a long-term plan wouldn't be covered. But what had been discussed this morning about really focusing on how to reopen the economy and how to get people back in would absolutely be awarded and reasonable under the CARES Act.
So I don't know whether anybody has seen the ad campaign that Coeur d'Alene Resort launched last week, that basically starts with an ad campaign about the region and then small businesses, and finishes up with, come to the Coeur d'Alene Resort to get away, yada, yada, yada. It's actually a really nice commercial, and kind of markets the whole spectrum of Coeur d'Alene, not just the resort, but the message you're left with is the resort and stuff. So I would assume that something like that would be eligible for CARES funding. And I see Carrie shaking her head yes.
Yes.
So I don't know whether anybody else saw that commercial. If anybody else has, what was your impression of it? Positive, negative? What was your reaction to it?
I think I've seen a lot of Idaho ads. That one, if I'm thinking of the right one, I mean, to me it sent sort of a message of we're open for business. Like we're back open. You can come here, and sort of it's we're back to normal. Is sort of the feeling that I got for it. It's you're safe to come here.
Yeah, it ended with a couple in one of the lakeside rooms looking out over the lake, and kind of a deal and stuff. I don't know what year the wine was, but anyway, it was a very nice, relaxed, comfortable commercial. Anyway, anybody else?
I have not seen it.
Okay.
I saw it, and I thought it was extremely effective too. And like Commissioner Kern said, I felt like it certainly. I mean, the overall resounding message was it's safe to come here, and we're taking the precautions necessary. So we'll see you soon, kind of message. And I thought it was, and it is exactly what we are going to do in lock and step with what phase we're in. And I think that it's important to keep in mind that the message it's not going to be a singular message. That luxury was reserved for non-COVID time. Now the message is going to have to be layered, and it's going to have to evolve as the phases move through. And so we're aware of that and prepared for the considerable amount of work that it takes to shift messages like that as we move through the phases.
But just keep in mind, as well as I keep saying, this is what keeps me up at night, is that Idaho's already advertising. So the people that are already starting to dream in different states and different regions and things like that are already being marketing too. And the longer that we are not marketing, the less time we're going to have in front of people and give people the opportunity to dream about what a wonderful destination Spokane is. And that's kind of a little bit of our push. Clearly, we understand the ramifications of the health districts and our phases and all. But as we said, as soon as we're ready to go, we have got to be out there doing that just for the competition level and really telling people our story.
And I'd like to reiterate that, it's going to take a couple weeks to even get all the contracts lined up with all the vendors. I mean, if approved today, we can't start today. I wish we could, but it's not possible. We can start some drip marketing as part of the campaign immediately with funds that we already have. But to launch a $2.5 million campaign that has to start and end by December is going to take at least a couple of weeks to get all the contracts and everything in place so it can launch effectively.
Yeah,
So,
Mary.
Meg, I guess that's one of the questions for me is since we are now further down from when you proposed this, is it still $2.5 million? Can we do it for going to be less? Again, just since we know we're not going to be getting to the next phase like we were hoping, we're not fully open like Coeur d'Alene is, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course we can. Again, like you're talking with time, it'll just eliminate with that amount of money. We would just be able to have a much wider reach, a lot more, of the different medias that we're doing. We can spend 2.5 million, however, it just depends on that. But if it does come in a little bit less than that, we wouldn't want to see anything under 2 million, just because that's going to be where we're going to be able to have a competitive edge. We're going to be able to really get the reach out to the region. And they say it takes 7 times for you to really listen to something. And so we want to be in their face over and over, both in all the different digital, television, billboards, all of that different thing, so that we can really make an impact. And I know I keep talking about dreaming, but that's kind of what everybody's saying right now, especially when people are at home and everybody's dreaming about their vacations. So that's why you're seeing all the videos and all. So we really want to start to capture those people to start to dream about Spokane, so that when they are ready, that they can come. And of course, the more that it's in your face, the more you're going to think about that.
And to answer about the time frame, Mary, with the money, there's a certain barrier in terms of media spend that is necessary to enter certain markets. And regardless of the time frame that the money is spent in Portland and Seattle are 2 markets that I would definitely consider that there is a certain amount of spend that if you don't spend enough in that market, you basically shouldn't spend anything, because you can't hit a large enough concentration of people to make it effective.
Thank you. And then I guess in your marketing, talking, listening to Carrie, I just want to make sure that we're meeting the mark, so that way we don't have any potential issues with the CARES dollars. I haven't seen the updated. I apologize, since I was traveling yesterday. I haven't seen the updated.
I can say with confidence after reading that, like, our organization, like, the idea of doing long-term planning right now is not even, you know what I mean? Because in the criteria, it speaks to, if you're going to do long-term strategic positioning and stuff, like, we're just kind of operating week to week. But we don't even have the capacity to do what it said you can't do, quite frankly. So it's not going to happen. It's impossible for us right now.
And we had a long conversation, and I think Carrie and I talked. I really appreciated talking to her on Friday. Is that we are going to be looking at metrics and everything that we're doing. So we'll be reporting on a monthly basis of all the metrics that are coming through, how we've lifted it up, and all those different things. So you'll see that they're very targeted marketing that we would have never done this year if not for COVID. So we feel very comfortable multiple times looking at the requirements that it does fit in. It's definitely business recovery, 100% for us.
And the benefit of Business Spokane is that we have highly sophisticated attribution software. I mean, we'll be able to tell you how many people came to each part of the county as a result of seeing our advertising. We'll be able to tell you how many hotel rooms were booked, how much revenue was booked in those, and how much money they paid per room. I mean, we will be able to tell you where they came from and where they came from. So all of that we will be able to tell you in detail as a result of the campaign. So it will be very clearly business recovery in terms of our reporting to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
So would this marketing campaign then include coordination with, Hoop Fest and a rescheduled Bloomsday and all of these other activities or events, or is that those activities separate from this?
We would consider them all part of it. We have strategic partnerships with both of the events that you just mentioned, as well as several others. So we would consider this all part of that.
Okay. So the question, so the other thing is, so who will ultimately, so are you going to hire a marketing company here locally to put the campaign together? Is this something you're going to put together, or how are you going to select the marketing company that's going to do this? I mean,
need to check in, Phil.
tell me a little bit about.
We better get up there. There's people just coming in, or however you want to do it.
Okay. Somebody's on the line. You've got to mute your phone, please. Thank you.
So the answer to that is Visit Spokane is essentially a marketing company. We use an ad agency and have used an ad agency to build the creative, actually do the design work, but the media buying and the strategy and the implementation and all that will be done by myself and my staff.
Okay. So the question for us is then, how much money do we want to allocate to this? Are there any parameters that we want to put around this in terms of expectations? And then timing. I mean, if the governor is serious and he's not even going to consider moving us into phase 3 for 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, we're really looking at the end of July, first part of August for any tangible results from a marketing effort as it relates to the hotels and stuff. So, so what are your thoughts, Mary?
Well, I guess I would have a question. So on the proposal document, the 19-page document on page 11, if I'm reading this correctly, the Visit Spokane campaign was planned to start on the 6th of July. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So with sort of the new information that we have from the governor, does that change? Would you ideally still want to start on the 6th, or do you think it makes more sense to delay that with what we now know from the governor?
That's a great question. So when we originally opposed this, Josh, we had assumed that that we would be opening right around the 4th of July, right after the 4th of July. And now in considering like when we proposed that, I thought, okay, if you guys approved it, then that would give me several weeks to be able to get all my ducks in a row to be ready to go to market. The time frame for launch hasn't changed in terms of how long it takes us, but the date has. So, we thought that in the next, if approved today, that would give me enough time to go get all the media buys, everything done, and then be able to go to market by the end of July. Is where we were at, because then we can play it by ear. But having the approval of the funds helps me be able to put together the media plan, because every single one of the vendors that you saw or the different media types that are in that proposal are going to require negotiated contract and all those things. So that the administrative part of it is going to take a couple of weeks. So my ideal time frame then would, if as long as we get the implementation of the mass and we are able to move to phase 3, it would be some kind of 2 or 3 weeks from now.
And in the meantime, we have been doing a lot of social media, lots of different advertising, we call it drip marketing, just so people know. And frankly, what's been really nice to see is we get the STAR report on a weekly basis, and our occupancies are growing a little bit. So we are already starting to see some just, random people coming without any marketing, or possibly even people staying for staycations or spocations. So we just feel like, we'll be able to give it that real shot in the arm and really start to get people coming as soon as we can start to tell our story regionally.
And another thing to keep in mind, and that we are taking into strong considerations, is not only the health, the overall health of our market, but the markets that we're going into, right? Because they've got to be at a certain phase either, because we don't want that problem either, where we're marketing to markets that have a really high concentration of impacted people by the disease, and we don't want that either, because I don't think that's in the best interest of our community. So it's much more tactical than it has been in the past for us, but we definitely take that responsibility very seriously.
So has based on your professional opinion, and now seeing with what we have from the governor, where our expected earliest possible date to move forward, kind of reading the tea leaves, how much money are you asking for today?
I would still encourage the commissioners to consider the full ask of $2.5 million. Going into Seattle and Portland, eventually into those markets, is extremely expensive, and I think that it gives us that ask gives us the best chance. But as Meg expressed before, anything over $2 million would be enough for us to do what we know we're capable of.
What we're trying to do is a layered, integrated marketing campaign, meaning all the different medias to go in, and that's usually the most effective. And Mary asked you a great question the other day, are we able with that to kind of turn on a dime if we see that, especially the internet buys, which will be the digital buys, which will be our largest. And with the equipment that we have, yes, we can see one market possibly doing better. We would turn into that aspect of it. But if it's much under than that, we'll end up going pretty much just to a digital campaign and not the other layered, like the TV, possibly some billboards and things like that, which will make an impact, but we wouldn't have the funding to be able to do that. All of them successfully, to exactly to what Jamie said, is that, if we just go in and do a small amount, we're only going to hit a small amount of people, and that's not going to be a big enough impact to use those dollars for. We want to be good stewards of that dollars and get as much out there as we can.
So Mary, you're over in Seattle, other than the fact that people are actually wearing their masks like they're supposed to, do you get a sense that business is starting to return to normal, or is it still very in hiatus?
Well, you got to remember, they just got to phase 2. Was it last week?
Last week.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it is very much that, I would say, very soft reopening. I mean, being at the hotel, it's like there's nothing in the hotel room. It's like if you need a glass, you have to request it. They're not doing any kind of room service until you leave, unless you request it, and you have to be out of the room entirely. It's just very interesting. We're over at Bell Square. Palomino's has closed. Their restaurant is now closed. Some of the restaurants are starting to reopen, but people are still not out and about over here at all, like we're seeing in Spokane. And I think it's just because they're in that initial phase. I know our daughter, when we went to dinner last night, that's the first time she's been out to dinner, in months, since this thing started over here. And they're not comfortable going to dinner with us tonight. It's even in the hotel, breakfast was, we're whatever status, so we get a free breakfast. It was room service. They're not, and it's all in to-go boxes. There's, it's very interesting and very different.
Yeah.
So
that travel experience gives us a huge advantage. Like that to me, that is the largest strategic advantage that we have, is that,
yeah,
that we're that far ahead. And Idaho has done the same thing to us.
Yeah.
Right. So that ripple effect. So yeah. So no, it's very much not business as usual over here, and it's just, it feels like just starting. I mean, it's almost still eerie on the streets walking around, how few people are out and about. So, and just looking at the drive times on the TV this morning, it's like 30 minutes faster than normal to get to Seattle. It's like, people just aren't out and about yet. So I think it's going to be, I think, that's where probably putting the dollars in now will help, help us in Spokane County versus what we're seeing here.
Right. And again, I will say from an advertising standpoint, the most effective is in home, right? If I can hit them in their home where I know they're still at, right, it helps tremendously. As people move and the market moves, to reach an audience becomes a lot more complicated. But when I know they're all sitting in their house, it becomes a lot easier to target.
Yeah, and I mean, some close friends of ours, they're still not going out. They're still doing takeout. I think, Josh, you talked about that as well, that it's, there's still that sense of, some people are out and about and others aren't. So it is, it's like, starting with that recreation, get out, ride your bike, walk, they're starting to get out that way. But then how do we get to the next step? And that's what's concerning in Spokane is when we're seeing these, restaurants and businesses have a huge spike, number of cases. That's why we've got to figure out what's that campaign to reduce that, because that's what's going to stop people from feeling safe to go out.
Exactly.
Right.
And we didn't really talk about, is that part of you guys and your budget to help direct that? Or is that, because that was kind of part of the GSI ask, but it was in conjunction with you guys. So that's the piece that we still have to figure out. How do we, because that's the piece that we've got to get going right away. So that way we can get people feeling safer to come out. Because I don't want us to go back to where people are not feeling safe to go out like I'm seeing over here.
Well, and I think,
yeah, we looked at that as two different campaigns. So it is different funding because we wanted to make sure that we had enough funding for the outside to bring those outside dollars in. The internal one was the separate money, but it's been crafted by both organizations and then will be lifted up. Jamie's got the expertise of doing some buying and things like that, so he'll be working on that. Kara's been kind of managing a lot of the activations and things like that we had in the program. Kara, I'm not trying to speak for you. I just wanted to know, Kara's doing a great job on that aspect of it. So what happened is we wanted to start with that internal, knowing that we needed to get people, the restaurants, we needed to get people wearing masks, which is the big thing now. They kind of overlap, and then we continue with that message. I kind of just whispered to Jamie, I don't know if anybody saw my newsletter that went out, or our newsletter, and the little turtle that we've started putting on, we put a mask on him. So we're going to, as we move forward, as a lot of our campaigns, we're going to have masks on all of our people that we're talking about and things like that to enforce that, whether it's subliminally or knowing. So those are the things that we're going to overlap as we move forward. And to be honest with you, even when we're in phase 3, that's not going to go away. So that's going to be that whole new norm for us, that whole new social norm. So any kind of our outside marketing that's going to be kind of the safety trigger in my mind. If people are going to see that, oh, it's okay to come to Spokane, there's a mask involved, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and the safety will underpin our tourism campaign. Undoubtedly, it'll be obvious, but we looked at the safety campaign locally through GSI, and we did develop it together. We worked together. Now, I know that Josh has expressed concern and Al about the message, and I think it's important, right, Kara, that the message isn't stone, right? That message could be tweaked a little bit about wearing the mask. Because essentially the point is the same. We're trying to get the same point across, but the actual verb or wordage or copy that's written can change, right?
Well, so thank you for asking that, and thank you, commissioners, for that meeting this morning. All of the design work, including a website, have been designed pro bono, and so that's upwards of $60,000 to $70,000 in, and we will kind of based on the decision today. There will be a soft campaign, which means primarily social media. If there's not funding for the GSI campaign as presented, or there will be, depending on funding, there would be a very, very broad media-based, out-of-home billboard, poster type of activity. So it one way or the other, the collateral that's already created, I believe my intention would be to get that piece out. Whether that's funded for media and broader is up to this decision. So I mean, I guess my bottom line is, if there would be changes, we would have to pay for it, and GSI does not have the funds to pay for updated creative and an updated website.
Okay.
So Al, did I answer your question?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah, I think so. Talk a little bit about the coordination with the PFD and their efforts.
Well, we're working hand in hand with PFD, Sports Commission, and all of us. What we're seeing right now is there's not really any group business, and clearly we can't congregate until we get into four. So what our whole goal right now is to get as many people staying in a hotel room, so that LTAC's coming through and that TPA is coming through to support the three of us as much as possible. So talking to them is, we've coordinated with staffing, the PFD and Visit Spokane. We're sharing salespeople to cut down on costs. But the whole goal for us with this is to get that LTAC and that TPA up with these campaigns.
Which will financially then support the PFD.
And Sports Commission.
And the Sports Commission.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk weekly. We talk even more than that about, saving costs and collaborating and things like that too. But basically what it comes down to is that those hotel tax for the three of our organizations.
So what would be the pleasure of the board? And the room went silent.
Josh, what are your thoughts? You've been quiet the longest.
Quiet? What? I've talked a lot. No, I think as far as the Visit Spokane pitch goes, if Carrie's confident that is eligible for the COVID, or I mean for the CARES dollars, if they've adequately hit on that, then I'm in support of that.
So I would be too. And I guess I'm wondering, Carrie, is there a need for, again, just a small administrative fee to administering that? Or if not, I don't know. Just because I know, it's okay. I guess, Meg, are you guys able to handle all that within your, who you've got working right now? Because I know you've laid off a lot of people. So you're you would have had a normal budget, and this isn't part of your normal budget.
And I think the only thing we did is we built in a $200,000 into our original 2.5 ask for creative. That's the one thing that we can't do internally. So that was built into that 2.5, and it was on the bottom of that whole ad sheet that we did. And there was a little bit of it built in for the GSI creative too as we move forward. But Jamie has, we would always welcome some additional help to possibly do buying and that type of thing. But Jamie is always going to be the one who is doing the buys, doing the strategy of where it should be, watching it, monitoring on a daily basis. So I think at this point, with that additional 200, we'd be fine at the 2.5.
Okay, so that's included in that.
It is.
And then
2.5, yes.
Okay, and then I guess kind of what you and I talked about when we had our conversation is just as the metrics come in, to be able to adjust and all of that on an as-need basis.
Right, and any of you could call Jamie on any day of the week, just if it's a curiosity for you, and he could pull up real-time information for you and let you know where we're at. And again, as I've assured, and when I talked to Carrie too, we talked about, as we turn in and look at the reimbursements and things like that, those will come along with reports and what it's going and how it's working and everything too.
Totally, and we can update. I'd be happy to send like a monthly update or however frequent you would want it to say, these are the round of optimizations that this campaign has gone through. These are the iterations of it, and these were the decisions made and why. I mean, I don't have any hobbies. This is all I do. So, like, if seriously, I mean, It's the truth. So like if at any point, like I would be happy to send you guys, these are the optimizations. These are why we made the changes. This is what we're seeing, and then compare it to what you guys have. So.
But I also want to make you clear that we do this on a monthly basis for our board. These are the KPIs that we are beholden to. Were beholden to before we went into it. So this is not anything that we're doing different for this. It's a completely different marketing campaign for different reasons, business recovery instead of a marketing campaign.
No, thank you. And I really like the fact that we're looking at this as business recovery for the hospitality industry that feeds so much, so many other businesses that need that economic recovery. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably the only thing I'd like to throw out there would be that as you develop that marketing campaign and you get it to a point to where you're I don't know 75, 80% comfortable with it and stuff, I think it'd be nice if you could bring it back to the board and just show us what you're going to be launching and stuff, so that we're familiar with it and aren't surprised when it hits the market and the media.
Absolutely, we could definitely do that.
Are Mary and Josh, are you okay with that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So do we want to go ahead and authorize them moving forward with this now or not? Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I thought Mary was about to say something. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there.
Oh.
I was just going to say, yeah, no, I think I'm ready for it. I think we need to, like I said, seeing kind of where Seattle is now versus where Idaho is and where we're at, we need to start to market to, help our hospitality industry recover.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. And are we with 2 or 2.5?
I think I'm okay with the 2.5 because I think it's going to be.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that as well. All right, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to approve and authorize the expenditure of up to $2.5 million of CARES Act funds to be spent on the marketing campaign as described and explained by Visit Spokane.
I will second that, and then I'm going to have a comment, Al.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Mary.
So I think we do want to, we didn't touch on, but we need to make sure that these funds are spent and that it, and that it is working through Carrie to make sure that that everything is meeting the criteria that way.
We actually spoke on thank you for putting us together. We had a wonderful conversation. I've already asked her if before any of this happens, the 4 of us can sit down, she and Maureen, our finance director, and Jamie, so that we're all on the same page. We know exactly how it's going to work, sign the contract, know exactly. So and she would graciously said yes, she'd be more than happy to do that. So we are trying to get all our ducks in a row before we spend a dime. So
great, thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted them, when they get 80, 85% done, to come back just to make sure that, not only the 3 of us are comfortable, but Carrie's comfortable as well. So if there's any tweaking we have to do before we go live with it, that we can do that and not have an oh dear God moment. Yeah. Okay. Any more comments? All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 The motion passes unanimously then. Great progress. Thank you. So the other major element, the other element of this thing we haven't talked about, and I'm not sure that the sense of urgency around it is as great, but maybe I could be wrong on that. The DSP part of the package, a much smaller part of the package, but still looking for some assistance. And I guess I'm still not real sure what it is that we're being asked to fund there. So did either one of you have a better understanding of that, Mary?
So I don't have a better understanding of that. I've got a noon meeting that I'm supposed to be on. So it's an 11:53, because I think we need to talk about, the Inlander and the Valley Chamber, they all had, asked as well as part of this whole group. But I apologize that we may have to delay that because I want to make sure we get to for the governor on the space headquarters.
Yeah, so thank you. I didn't realize we had a hard cutoff. So can we just go ahead and take a motion on the letter for the governor so we can get that out? We've got to get that out today. Josh?
Yeah, I know we had a screen share. Could somebody pull the letter back up just so I get the wording right in the motion?
He's looking for the letter to the governor.
Letter to the governor, this letter.
I'm pulling it up.
Okay, thank you. There it
There
is.
you go.
There we are.
Scroll down so we can read it.
A little bit. All right. Mr. Chair, move to approve the drafting and signing of a letter stating Spokane County's Board of Commissioners that we are submitting our nomination for consideration to host the headquarters of the United States Space Command, to be signed by the board at other than open public meeting, and authorize the use of our stamps.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Then Gina, if you could get that put together, stamped, and let's get it off to Adam McDaniel, the governor's office, David Portman, and get that out today. Also send a copy of it to Alicia Benson as well. All right, that completes all the items coming before the board.
I have one more, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you got to be quick. Mary's got a deadline.
It's going to be really quick. Here it is. It's up on the board. This is a resolution in the matter of supporting Spokane County law enforcement. I sent a copy out. You probably didn't have time to read it on your emails, but if you could read it real quick, it's not very long. This was forwarded to me by the sheriff's office, and Mr. Knowles worked on it, and they are looking for support from the board for law enforcement.
You have support if they want to cancel the barbecue. So we can move forward with that. You got your stamp. Give me your stamp.
It's our resolution, so if you want to edit, please feel free to edit.
Take it to Jim.
Okay. Are we okay to support this, or do you want to defer it to the meeting in the future?
They haven't made a motion. Oh, they haven't.
Josh, Mary?
Josh, what's your thoughts?
It's very short. We don't normally pass many resolutions that are this short. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Is the timing of this because the police? I know there's all kinds of timing, but because the police guild hasn't got their contract figured out with the city of Spokane?
No, I think this, as it was explained to me, the general gist of this is the sheriff's department, with all the things that have been going on, they're trying to keep the morale up. And one of the things that would mean a lot to the sheriff department is that the board show their support for all their efforts and what they do for the community. That's it. Has nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah, I would support this. So being over here in Seattle, there was 2 other people that were, shot in the chop zone over here, which,
Crazy.
yeah, it's just insane. There's a lot of really good police officers and sheriff's deputies. And so I would support this.
Yeah, no, the only thing I would have added, I would have added a whereas there stating, just the high level of training that our law enforcement officers here go through. I mean, we hear Ozzy talk about the length of training that they have to go through before they ever get in a car. The length of training that they do there, along with a deputy, a veteran deputy. I mean, it's just that, and then their continuing education and training that they have to go through during their entire time as a deputy. I would have added in a whereas about that, just stating that just how highly trained our local law enforcement are as well. But there's nothing in here that I think is wrong.
So if you want to go ahead and make the motion, Josh, and just, include in your motion, adding that additional whereas, we can have Jim wordsmith it before final signature so that it reflects what you're trying to capture there. I don't know that I would disagree with anything you said there and stuff. So if we wanted to do that, we could go ahead and
Knowles work with you.
Okay.
And I would also add in too that, that we are, that our, deputies are working with mental health, for the community as well. Because I think that's an important piece to put in there that we're doing that. We're providing that additional service too.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have Jared work with John Knowles and get that incorporated as the whereas.
Okay. Did somebody make note of those 2 about the level of training and the involvement with mental health professionals?
Yep, we got it.
Okay. Anything else that we'd like to see added?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chair, I move to approve a resolution in the matter of Spokane County's commitment and support of Spokane County law enforcement to include the additional whereas stating the high level of training that our local officers go through, as well as our commitment and collaboration with mental health professionals as a part of our local law enforcement as well, to be signed by the board at other than an open public meeting, and authorize the use of our signatures.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Let the record reflect the ayes have it. Thank you.
One final thing, board, like your direction on canceling the employee picnic. I think under the circumstances, that may be a prudent thing to do this year.
Okay. So if there's nothing else coming before the board, Mary, Josh, so have a nice 4th, and we'll see you next Monday. And that completes all the work coming before the board, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Feel better, Al.